Hello and welcome to the second episode on the construction and the expansion, if you like, of Heaton Lodge Junction Phase 2. My name's Simon George. Now, you've probably already guessed, but we are not in the basement today. Well, we will be in a bit, but at the minute we're at the real Heaton Lodge Junction, where in fact Network Rail are doing an extension of the real place. They are, in fact, shortly to be putting the electrification wires up, but in doing so, they've demolished the cottages behind me, which are on the layout. You may have seen them. You probably wouldn't have missed them, actually, because it's just about the only building on the scenic side. What they haven't demolished yet is the footbridge, which is also on the layout and which I'm stood on now. And from recollection, I think it was built about 1899 by the LNWR. But I'm stood on this footbridge now, happily, and behind me is the two dive under tunnels, one of which is still in use, and then the other side is the colour light signal of the dive under line to let trains join the main line. Now, I've got you here today for a couple of reasons. In fact, two reasons. I'm going to be making two announcements later in this video. One that's really exciting for me and I've put a lot of thought into. But before I do that, as I was coming up the steps to this footbridge, I just kind of realised that this was the stomping ground for so many years of the Class 124 Trans-Pennine units, which used to go from Liverpool to Manchester and Newcastle. And I remember them very well from the 1970s and the early 1980s. And just looking through my video archives the other day, I found a great video of the an O-gauge scratch-built Class 124 popping out the dive under tunnel just behind me again, under this footbridge where I am now, and then joining the main line. So before I go any further, let's just have a look at that and remind ourselves of the Trans-Pennine units from the 1980s. See you in a second. That maybe brought back some memories for some of you, I don't know. But back to here again. We're going to go back down to the basement shortly, but going back to the two announcements I wanted to make. The first is that I'm going to be changing eras from the 1980s to the early 2000 era. There's a good reason for that. The first is that I just think the liveries are a lot more colourful, and given that this new layout and model is going to be... Oh, we've got another train coming past. Trans-Pennine Express again. But yeah, because this new layout with its second extension is going to be straight flat bang in the middle of the, or slap bang rather, in the middle of the general public at places where they go, I just thought it'd just be more familiar to them to see liveries like DB Schenker, GBRF, Colas Rail Freight and all the rest of it. It's going to be difficult getting all the rolling stock together, but I have a plan for that, which I'll elaborate on bit later. The second and more exciting announcement for me is that I'm going to be showing you guys a way of how you can become involved in this yourself. We'll go back down to the basement in a minute and I'll talk more about that in more detail. But before I do, I think this 66 is about to pop out the tunnel. So we'll have a look at here him coming under the footbridge any second now, and I'll see you back in the basement. So here we are back down in the basement, and I am very excited today because I have got something here which has just been delivered, which I'm going to share with you guys now, and this will probably give you a clue. The gantry towers, which at Healy Mills as a child I used to see them. I think we're all so familiar with these things. In fact, I think there's still some at Tyne Yard where I drove past the other week. This, as I've just said, gives you a clue. It's a 00 gauge gantry tower made by, and here we are, Steve Smith from Railway Laser Lines is here. Simon. Good morning. Good to see you. Thanks for coming and thanks for driving up.
No problem. Thanks for inviting me.
Yeah, it's just, you think this is big, 00 gauge, but let's just have a look at this.
This is your O-gauge version.
O-gauge version, of which there are, what, 5, Steve?
Yep, we made 5 for your layout.
Yeah.
You'll most probably need a few more, judging by the length of your layout. But
yeah,
we
indeed.
start with 5.
But what is just incredible about this is the intricacy of which you can probably see. Simon, if you want to just come a bit closer, we've actually got, would you believe, from, is it Model U that made the...
Yeah, I had myself scanned.
So we have got Steve Smith.
To put myself on.
There he is, climbing the ladder. He's going to be there for a bloody long time.
I'm going no further.
No, exactly. But the intricacy of these is phenomenal, and I'm just so pleased with them. Of course, the lights are still going to go at the top, which I'm going to take care of. I'm quite decided how I'm going to work that out, but these are just fantastic, and they are so light. You think, looking at them, Steve, they look like steel, but they're actually... Just tell us a bit about how you made them.
It's made from model board, which is a material that we use. It's a bit like an MDF and card, but it's very flexible, so we can use that. And you can get the intricate detail from the laser machine.
Got you.
And obviously, this is a 7-tier tower, so there are 7 tiers to each of the towers. So
right.
As you see, the ladders go up, and they go up at really tight angles.
Yeah.
So...
Because they did on the real thing, didn't they?
Yeah. This is as close as you're going to get to the real thing. You know, thankfully, I've got a couple of train driver friends who took a load of photographs for me, so I must say thank you to them.
Yeah.
And it's built in 2 sections because of the detail of, and obviously the height.
Yeah.
You know, this is just over 1 metre tall. I couldn't get it in the laser machine, so we had to build it in 2 parts.
Yeah.
And obviously each section is made up. So this section is 1 part, and this section is another part, and you've got your gantry.
Yeah.
There's about 100 parts in total to build it all in. But once you put it all together and you bond it, it becomes really rigid, you know.
It is.
I could physically drop it, it wouldn't break.
It is incredible.
And on the 00 gauge one, you could put a loco on top and it wouldn't bend.
Yeah.
So there is a little bit of flexibility, of course, but, you know.
We've also got the... I mean, this is another work of art here.
We made the palisade fencing to go inside.
The palisade fencing. Well. So, just remind me, Steve, this goes in...
The
ladder goes against the gate.
That's it. So.
I mean, look at that. That is just...
And it'll slot in there, so obviously when you put it in there, you can just
there we
pull
go.
them out.
It's just an incredible piece of work. And what I love is that as the camera pans in, you can just see the intricacy. Can't get my words out. It's so intricate, is what I'm trying to say, because you can even see the rivet holes, rivets.
If you look carefully, where we join them, you can see rivets.
Yeah.
And they're engraved, so they basically show the rivets.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which you wouldn't want to make this by hand.
No.
Which you tried to do with brass.
I did try and do it with brass, and it was a complete and utter failure. I tried it. I tried with a soldering iron. But I couldn't get the metal hot enough to, in the end I used a blowtorch, but it's just too much of a blunt instrument. Let's just move it back to where some rolling stock is, because when it's here, in fact, I'm going to move it over here. when it's here, it's actually even more. You can see there, I don't know if the camera can pick that up, Simon, but you can see really just how big it is compared to the rolling stock. But when you compare it to the 00 version, the 00 version, actually, you could get away with that. I was saying that earlier, Steve. You could actually get away with the 00 version until you see the O gauge version.
And when you go and visit the real world, like Crewe, Basford Hall and Bescott, these lights actually really dominate the area and the skylines.
Yeah.
It's not until you see them in the flesh you realise how tall they are.
Yeah.
But obviously on your layout here, with all the track work, it's going to become a very good feature part, and especially if you put your lights on.
It is.
I look forward to seeing that.
Yeah, I do as well. And they're going to be shining down. And I think actually when I it reminds me of Miniature Wonderland in Germany when I went to see that layout a few months ago, because they have a way of dimming all the lights and you get all this, everything lit up. But even they haven't got a marshalling yard as big as this. But if you pan down, Simon, just look to the right, you can see where the extension obviously hasn't been built yet on either side. All that track, as I said in the first video, is coming up. But when it is laid, or in the new way it's going to be laid with these gantry towers, it really should be absolutely phenomenal for us all to see, which is what this is all about. So yeah. But yeah, I'm just staggered by the intricacy, Steve. It's a masterpiece. It really is.
Them. You know, they took a long time to do. But it's one of those things where you've got to take time to actually make them. But the end result, you know, I sat back and thought, wow.
Yeah, they do. They look.
And obviously, like say, the 00 gauge one you'd think was an O gauge one. But,
yeah.
You know, the 00 gauge one will be available as a kit. I don't think we'll do the O gauge one as a kit. I don't think anybody else is mad enough to have a layout.
Mad is probably the word. Yeah, but so just going back, the 00 gauge one is available.
Is available from. Be released in June as a kit. So you can find that on the railwaylaserlines.co.uk website.
Fantastic.
There'll most probably be an option to have it made for you. Haven't decided yet.
Yeah.
I've got to make another building for this gentleman next to me.
The Healy Mills building is en route. Next. Yeah, and that's going to be again. I remember the Healy Mills building really well as a child, and it was. It's just an iconic design. Such a shame it's been demolished. I think it was only demolished.
That's the hardest part. When you actually try to design something, you can't go and visit it anymore.
No,
you've got to rely on photographs.
Yeah, of course.
Google Earth is a great system to go back in history and do. So it's a 4-road shed one end, 3-road shed the other. Brilliant. A metre long inspection pits. They've been made already.
Fantastic.
So you might have the biggest inspection pit. Britain's biggest inspection pit.
Britain's biggest inspection pit. I like that. Yeah.
So they've been made. The outer building's been made, but we've got to create the actual depot building, which will be over the next few months.
And I should say to everybody watching, that is going to be the subject of another video, possibly not the next one, but the one after, hopefully.
I shall have it by then.
Yeah, you've got your work cut out now. So, so gantry towers, we've got how many altogether? Simon, just behind you, there's another 5 altogether. Yeah. And I was just saying to Steve, look at the intricacy of the boxes. I'm just amazed by the boxes apart from anything else. Just a work of art. Fantastic work, Steve. And thanks for coming up.
It's been a pleasure.
No, great. I can't wait to assemble these like a young child and... have a mess around when they're all, and again when they're fully lit, they're just going to be something else. So thanks a lot, Steve.
Pleasure.
Been great.
It's been an absolute pleasure, Simon. Thank you very much for inviting me to Heaton Lodge today.
Pleasure. So here we are back on the footbridge again. It's funny actually because I remember when I was stood on this footbridge, it must be, it's got to be 40 years ago now. There's a signal behind me, you can probably just see it's actually at red, but it was really very rarely at red back then, simply because you probably won't be able to tell, but this gradient known as a dive under is actually 1 in 80. So you've really got to get some speed coming out of the dive under tunnels behind me to make it up this gradient. So it was very rare that a train was held at that signal, because obviously, given the 1980s and beyond, it was difficult to get a freight train restarted again on this incline. But anyway, the reason I've got you back here again before we go back down to the basement is just to elaborate a bit more on this way that you guys can get involved. Now, I remember the first phase of Heaton Lodge Junction. There was a lot of speculation. Some of you might remember a couple of years ago when it was in the press, and I ended up on BBC Breakfast. How embarrassing! But yeah, they were saying, oh, it must have cost about 250,000. Well, I added it up for the first time, Phase 1 Heaton Lodge, and that's 6 years it took me to build it. And in fact, they weren't far wrong. It was actually about 231,000, which, as I'm sure you'll agree, is a huge amount of money. Now, this second phase, Phase 2 of Heaton Lodge, the extension with all the buildings and everything else, I've totted it all up, and it's going to cost around about £100,000 to do, which is just out of my sphere at the minute. So today I am launching a crowdfunding campaign, which I really hope you'll get involved in. So just to be specific, for £25, a £25 donation to help me towards the costs of this extension, which of course will take probably about 18 months to do, minuscule compared to the 6-7 years it took me to do the first Phase 1. Anyway, £25 will get you 2 free tickets to wherever this new railway and its extension are going to go to. And at the minute, it looks like it's going to go anywhere from Aberdeen all the way down to Exeter. It's going to be, again, 18 months before it's finished. There's £25, just to clarify again. I'll get you 2 free tickets. It'll also get you behind the scenes tours of how it all operates when it's out in the location that you choose to visit it at. So, and also the video updates you'll get every month, of course, as well. So again, £25 gets you 2 free tickets to any of the locations the railway visits. It also gets you behind the scenes tours, and it gets you the video updates, of course, which you can see every month, which is going to be about progress. It's going to be about the cost of everything. It's also going to include some interesting interviews, like we did with Steve, about the people who are actually involved in building the buildings and fabricating the steel carts even, which is all part of this extension. So I'm going to take you back to the basement now again, and we're just going to elaborate on these costs, because I just want to go through with you very quickly, show you where this £100,000 is going to go. And yeah, just, I think, you know, detail is everything. Let's have a look at it in more detail. Okay, so here we have the breakdown of the costs for the second phase of Heaton Lodge Junction's extension. Now, I'm not going to go through these individually, simply because I did a practice run. It took about 15 minutes and we'll all be falling asleep, or, well, hopefully not. But so I'm just going to go through the main points here. The first point, the 35 steel fabricated hand carts. Well, don't forget that these are carrying buildings weighing about 100 kilos. So we do need these, because I don't fancy lifting 100 kilos of building. And they just rock onto the back of the trucks with the casters. So they're dead easy to move around, and they just obviously clamp onto the side of the existing layout. So it just looks like it's all one thing. Cement factory. Now, you've probably got some pictures just about to pop up on your screen here. This is of the HO scale cement factory at the Miniature Wonderland exhibition in Hamburg in Germany. I've taken the plans for this because it's going to work really well on this layout. Again, because of Hellion's recent PCAs. cement wagons, which will go really well with this. We've also got some working radio-controlled cement mixers, trucks in O-gauge, which are going to move around this facility as well. So I'll come on to that in a second. The power station turbine building we've talked about before. The cooling towers we've talked about in the past. The cooling towers made out of fiberglass. It's the only material you can get that concave shape. So, but it is quite expensive, the fiberglass. Not so much the fiberglass itself, but the molds for the fiberglass. Chemical unloading facility. Again, you've probably got a picture of a real thing popping up here. This is going to work well with the chemical versions of the PCA tanks. So we're going to have a chemical unloading facility also on the new layout. MGR coal train unloading facility, I've touched on this many times. Quite a small building, but what's interesting is that the DAPL HAAs that we're going to use to carry the coal are going to have modified doors at the bottom, which drop open with magnets. The coal, or what looks like coal, drops onto a conveyor belt and then up and over the marshalling yard and into the side of the turbine building, so for the power station. So that'll look really good. Totem traction depot. Again, we've mentioned this before. Simple building, really large, but it's quite simple to make. It's just very, very heavy. But again, we'll talk about that later in another video. Miscellaneous costs for £4,000 for extra permanent way buildings and the terraced houses, of course, which you see a lot in Yorkshire. Now, the full touchscreen automatic control of the layout is interesting. This is a bit of a progress forward from phase one of the automatic control, which we had on the first Heaton Lodge. And this is because what we need in this new layout, it's so big. What we don't want, rather, is 15 operators all falling over themselves trying to control trains. What we will have is trains working automatically, following signals, moving points. They're going to be able to make conflicting movements. So it's just going to look really full of movement, which is really what I want. So I think it is absolutely essential to the running of this new layout. Now, the radio-controlled O-gauge vehicles, I just touched on the cement mixers earlier, but we're also going to have, again popping up now, you'll see this excavator, which my friend Giles Fable's made. He's a model engineer. That's actually converted quite interestingly from a dinky toy from the 1970s. But it works fantastically well. This one's obviously moving what looks like coal manually into DAPL HAAs. But we're going to have trucks, we're going to have cars. These are going to have to be worked individually by people behind the scenes. But I think it's worth it because, again, they'll provide a lot more movement. And talking of movement, onto the canal construction. Cost of $3,000 there, and that's mainly for the steel cradles that support the canal. They're going to be on the scenic side. The real water, which is going to run all the way down the whole length of the canal, has got self-propelled canal boats in them, and that's going to be the subject of a future video because it's really interesting and really simple how they work. But basically, real water, thickened real water, and self-propelled canal boats moving at a very, very slow pace, just walking pace as the real things do, obviously. We've got rolling stock. We need a lot of rolling stock. I've got quite a bit, but we're going to need a lot more. You'll see some of the GBRF wagons at the bottom of this whiteboard. We need a lot more of those to run with all the 60s and 66ers and all the other, and 56ers, of course, that we've got planned. Construction materials, 5,000. That's mainly timber. Timber's gone through the roof recently, as we all know. Full surround back scene, that's 10,000, and that's 6-7 foot high. It goes all the way around the inside of the layout, so you get immersed in the whole layout, which I think is really important. We've got a bit of money, 5,250 for contingency, and of course the labour, should I say, is free of charge because that's me. Now, I've got the time to do it. I carried the first one through, which took me 6 years. This is going to take probably a quarter of that time, if not less. But don't doubt my determination to see it through because when this is finished, it really will be an awesome spectacle for us all to enjoy more than anything else. So that's how we get to 100,000. Again, the justgiving.com crowdfunding link is in the description of the video. but it's also at the bottom of the page if you want to manually put it in, and then you can donate the £25 or £100 if you could do, and I'd be extremely grateful if you did. We'll come on to that more in a second, but first let's just take another couple of minutes out and just have a look at another video of Heaton Lodge Junction itself. Speak to you in a second. Okay, so just to clarify with the donations again that I'm just asking for, again, don't want to bore you, but £25 donation. In return for that, it's 2 tickets to visit the completed layout at any of the location venues I've got planned from Aberdeen to Exeter. You get the on-location behind-the-scenes tours as well, which we'll be conducting when the layout's out to view the operations. You might even, if you're lucky, you might be able to take over a train yourself, because it's quite easy with this new automated system to manually take control. And obviously there'll be the monthly video updates on progress, on costs, and on location footage from subcontractors who are involved in the build too. For £100 gets you the unlimited visits for 2 people. So basically you can come to as many of the locations and as many of the venues that the new layout will be visiting as many times as you want. So £100 gets you unlimited visits for 2 people and all the above. So again, just to finish, to donate, please see the link in the description of this video. If you can't donate, no problem, but please like and subscribe to the video channel anyway, which will help me bring you some really good content in the future. It's about time I was making tracks, no pun intended, of course. So again, thanks for donating. I really appreciate it. We've got loads of really, really interesting stuff coming in the next video, which will be out in about 3 to 4 weeks' time. And I'll bring you up to date with what we've been talking about today. So I'll see you next month, and thanks again.